The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of seats held beings from across the known galaxy. Some floated in tanks of purple liquid. Others perched on crystal platforms that hummed with energy. A few looked almost human, but their eyes held the cold wisdom of creatures who had lived for centuries. Ambassador Sarah sat in the small human section near the back. She was alone except for 2 assistants. Around her, other species had delegations of hundreds. The Empire had brought an entire war council. The ethereal collective had sent their floating mind speakers who never touched the ground. Sarah had been Earth's voice in this place for 5 years. She had learned to speak 12 different languages. She had studied the customs of 47 species. She had smiled politely while aliens talked about humans like they were children playing with toys. Today was different. Today the Coalition had made their demands clear. Supreme Commander of the stood at the central podium. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin covered in scars. Each scar told a story of battle. His species had conquered 300 worlds before joining the Federation. They did not ask for things. They took them. The human colonies in the Outer Rim must be abandoned, he announced. His voice boomed across the hall without any help from machines. These worlds belong to the Coalition by right of superior force and ancient claim. Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Some sounded approving. Others seemed bored. This was just another day of dividing up space between the strong. Elder of the Ethereal Collective rose next. He did not use his mouth to speak. His words appeared directly in every mind present. The ethereals had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They considered themselves the wise guardians of galactic civilization. The humans have held these worlds for barely 3 decades. His mental voice was cold and distant. They have built no great cities. They have created no lasting monuments. They farm and trade and build small settlements. This is not the mark of a species ready for expansion. More aliens nodded in agreement. Sarah felt their eyes on her. She could sense their thoughts even without telepathy. Here was the member of their club, the primitive little species from Sol who had somehow stumbled onto faster-than-light travel. Humans had been in space for less than 100 years. Most of these beings had been spacefaring for thousands. The vote was a formality. When it came, Sarah was not surprised. 834 species voted to give the Coalition what they wanted. Only 13 voted against. Humans were alone among the major powers. Council Speaker, a being that looked like a tree made of silver metal, called for any final statements. His mechanical voice showed no emotion. Does the human delegation wish to address this decision? Sarah stood. Around her, conversation stopped. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and mental probes focused on her small figure. She walked slowly to the speaking platform. Her steps echoed in the vast chamber. She looked out at the assembled species. She had spent years studying these beings. She knew their histories, their fears, their strengths and weaknesses. She had read about their wars, their victories, their defeats. Most importantly, she had learned about their assumptions. They assumed humans were weak because humanity had never fought a major war since joining the Federation. They assumed humans were simple because human technology seemed basic compared to theirs. They assumed humans were grateful just to be allowed into their ancient club of star-traveling species. They were wrong about all of it. Honored delegates, Sarah began. Her voice was calm and clear. For 30 years, humanity has followed every Federation law. We have respected every treaty. We have kept the peace in every dispute. We have limited our growth, restricted our military, and shown restraint in all conflicts. She paused. The hall was perfectly quiet now. Even the floating ethereals had stopped their constant whispered conversations. We did this by choice, she continued. Not because we had to, because we wanted to be good members of this Federation, because we believed in working together instead of fighting. Supreme Commander snorted with amusement. Empty words from a weak species. Your military could not defend a single world against our fleets. Sarah turned to look directly at him. Commander, you have never seen our military. The commander laughed. It was a harsh sound like grinding metal. We have seen your patrol ships. We have examined your colony's defenses. You have perhaps 1,000 combat vessels. We have 10 times that number. You have seen what we chose to show you, Sarah said simply. Elder's mental voice cut through the air like a cold wind. Are you suggesting humans have been hiding military strength? That would violate multiple Federation treaties. No, Sarah replied. We have followed every treaty exactly as written. We have never built more military vessels than allowed. We have never developed weapons beyond the permitted specifications. We have never established military bases in restricted zones. She looked around the hall again. But treaties can be ended, restrictions can be lifted, permissions can be withdrawn. The hall erupted in noise. Aliens spoke in dozens of languages at once. Some laughed at the humans' apparent desperation. Others seemed confused. A few looked worried. Sarah waited for quiet. When it came, she spoke again. The Coalition wants our colonies. They believe they can take them by force. They think we are too weak to resist. She took a deep breath. Terra respectfully asks that this decision be reconsidered, not because we cannot give you what you want, but because if we are forced to refuse, the consequences will be far worse than any of you imagine. Supreme Commander's laughter boomed across the hall. Is this a threat, human? Your species threatens the combined might of the Coalition. Sarah's expression did not change. It is a warning, Commander, nothing more. We have been good neighbors for 3 decades. We have been peaceful partners. We have been the species that follows rules and keeps promises. But if you force us to break those promises, if you make us abandon the rules we chose to follow, then you will learn what humanity really is. She turned to address the entire assembly one last time. The vote is final. We accept that. You have 30 days to reconsider. After that, we will do what we must do to protect our people. And when this is over, do not say we did not warn you. Sarah walked back to her seat in silence. Behind her, the noise began again. Aliens argued and laughed and dismissed her words as the desperate bluffing of a cornered species. None of them noticed that Sarah was smiling. News feeds across the galaxy showed the same story for weeks. Human cargo ships leaving their outer rim colonies, families packing their belongings, children saying goodbye to the only homes they had ever known. The evacuation appeared to be going exactly as the Coalition had demanded. On Prime, Supreme Commander watched the reports with satisfaction. His massive war room displayed holographic images of human settlements being abandoned. His officers pointed out how quickly the humans were surrendering their claims. "See how they run," growled to his staff. "They made big words in the council chamber, but when faced with real force, they show their true nature. Cowards, just like we always knew." But in a small monitoring station orbiting the ethereal, intelligence analyst noticed something odd. She had been studying human evacuation patterns for her daily reports. The numbers did not match. New Geneva colony was supposed to have 60,000 residents, but the cargo ships leaving the planet only carried about 20,000 people. Checked the data 3 times. She ran probability calculations. Either the humans were very bad at counting their own people, or something else was happening. She brought her concerns to her supervisor, but Elder dismissed them. "Humans are primitive," he said without looking up from his meditation crystal. "They probably cannot count properly, or perhaps some decided to hide in the wilderness. It does not matter. The Coalition fleets will clear them out soon enough." On a dozen other worlds, similar intelligence officers noticed similar problems. Cargo manifests did not match colony populations. Energy signatures from human settlements were increasing instead of decreasing. Long-range scanners detected construction activity on worlds that were supposed to be emptying. When questioned, human diplomats gave simple answers. Archaeological surveys, they would say. We want to document our history on these worlds before we leave. Or cultural preservation efforts. We are saving important artifacts for future generations. The answers seemed reasonable. Most aliens had their own cultural preservation programs. The idea that humans would want to save their short history made sense to species who measured time in. Admiral of the Hegemony Fleet was less patient than his diplomatic colleagues. He had been given command of the first wave that would claim the human colonies. His orders were simple. Arrive, confirm the humans had left, establish coalition control. He chose New Geneva as his first target. It was one of the largest human colonies, and taking it would send a clear message. His fleet consisted of 47 heavy cruisers and 200 support vessels, more than enough to handle any humans who might have chosen to stay behind. The journey to New Geneva took 8 days. During the trip, Admiral reviewed intelligence reports about the colony. Farming settlements scattered across 2 continents, a small spaceport, some mining operations in the southern mountains, population of about 60,000 before the evacuation began. Nothing that should challenge a proper military force. When his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system, Admiral expected to see empty space around the planet. Instead, his sensors immediately detected multiple energy sources on the surface. Strong energy sources. "What am I looking at?" he demanded from his communications officer. Lieutenant checked her screens twice before answering. "Sir, the human settlements appear to still be active, but the energy readings are much higher than they should be for farming communities." Admiral frowned. His species had conquered worlds for 3 centuries. He knew what a frightened colony looked like when the warships arrived. This did not look right. "Open a channel to the surface," he ordered. The response came quickly. A human male appeared on the main screen. He wore a simple military uniform with no decorations. His name tag read Tors. He looked calm. "This is Colonel Tors of the New Geneva Defense Force," the human said. "State your business in our system." Admiral was surprised by the directness, but he had dealt with stubborn colonists before. "I am Admiral of the Hegemony Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, this world now belongs to the Coalition. You will surrender immediately." Colonel Tors was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, your intelligence appears to be incorrect. This world belongs to humanity, and we intend to keep it that way." The alien admiral felt his temper rising. "Human, look at your sensors. Count my ships. You have no fleet to defend you. You have no weapons that can threaten us. Surrender now and you will be allowed to leave peacefully." "Sir," Tors said politely, "you were warned. This is your last chance to withdraw your forces and leave our system." Admiral cut the communication channel. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They had all heard the human's words. Some seemed amused, others appeared confused. "Target the largest settlement," the admiral commanded. "Full orbital bombardment. Teach these primitives the cost of defying superior force." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, there are still civilians down there." "They chose to stay," replied coldly. "Fire." 20 heavy energy beams lanced down from the fleet toward New Geneva's surface. Each beam carried enough power to level a city block. Together, they should have turned the human settlement into a smoking crater. The beams never reached the ground. Something stopped them. Something invisible absorbed the deadly energy and redirected it back toward the fleet. The reflected beams struck Admiral's flagship and 6 other ships with perfect accuracy. Shields overloaded. Hull plates melted. 3 ships lost main power completely. The bridge of the flagship filled with smoke and alarm signals. Admiral pulled himself up from where the impact had thrown him. Around him, his crew struggled to understand what had happened. "Report," he shouted. His tactical officer was staring at his displays in disbelief. "Sir, our weapon's fire was reflected back at us. Some kind of defensive screen around the planet. I have never seen anything like it." Admiral looked at the tactical display. 7 of his ships were damaged. The humans should not have technology capable of stopping orbital bombardment. No species in the Federation had defensive systems that advanced except for the ethereals, and theirs required massive installations that took decades to build. Colonel Torres appeared on the communication screen again without being called. His calm expression had not changed. "Admiral," he said, "we told you to leave. You chose not to listen. You fired on our homes and our families. That was a mistake." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared around New Geneva. Ships were rising from the planet's surface, but they did not look like any human vessels in the Federation database. They moved too smoothly. They accelerated too quickly. They radiated energy signatures that should not have been possible. "My name is Colonel Torres," the human continued. "I am the commanding officer of the New Geneva Defense Force. You have 30 minutes to withdraw your fleet from our system. If you choose to stay, we will consider it an act of war." Admiral stared at the display as more impossible human ships joined the formation around New Geneva. His damaged fleet suddenly seemed very small and very far from home. For the first time in his military career, he gave an order he had never expected to give. "All ships," he said quietly, "begin withdrawal to the hyperspace jump point." As his battered fleet limped away from New Geneva, Admiral wondered what other surprises humanity might have been hiding. The news of Admiral retreat spread across the galaxy in hours. A coalition fleet driven away by human colonists. Impossible technology that could stop orbital bombardment and reflect it back at attackers. Ships that moved like nothing any species had ever seen. Emergency sessions began immediately in the Galactic Council. Species that had ignored the human warning suddenly wanted answers. How had humans developed technology that exceeded even the most advanced civilizations? Where had they hidden these capabilities for 30 years? Elder of the Ethereal Collective called for an immediate investigation. His mental voice carried undertones of worry that he tried to hide. "The humans have clearly violated multiple treaties regarding military development. This technology should not exist." Supreme Commander was less controlled. His face showed rage and embarrassment. One of his admirals had been humiliated by primitive farmers. "The humans have been lying to us for 3 decades. They have been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful." But other species were asking different questions. Intelligence analysts from a dozen worlds reviewed every human contact for the past 30 years. They looked for signs they had missed, clues they had ignored, warnings they had not understood. What they found disturbed them more than the military technology. Humans had been studying everyone. Every diplomatic meeting had been recorded and analyzed. Every trade negotiation had been examined for weaknesses. Every cultural exchange had been used to gather information about alien psychology and tactics. Human students had attended universities on 40 different worlds. Human artists had traveled to hundreds of colonies. Human merchants had visited every major spaceport in the galaxy. All of them had been collecting data. The Galactic Council demanded that Ambassador Sarah explain humanity's actions. She appeared before the emergency session alone, as she had during the original vote. But this time, the hall was completely silent when she walked to the speaking platform. "Honored delegates," she began, "you ask how we develop technology that you do not understand. The answer is simple. We learned from you." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembled aliens. Sarah continued, "For 30 years we have been the students in this galactic classroom. We attended your universities, we studied your history, we learned your languages, we examined your technology, we asked questions, lots of questions." She looked directly at the section. We learned about your military tactics by reading your own military history. We studied your ship designs by examining every vessel that visited Earth. We analyzed your weapons by watching your training exercises that you broadcast on public channels. Her gaze moved to the ethereal delegation. We discovered the principles behind your defensive systems by attending your engineering lectures. We improved upon them by asking, "What if we did this differently?" Elder's mental voice was cold. "You stole our technology." "We learned from it," Sarah corrected. "Just as you learned from species that came before you. The difference is that we learned from all of you at the same time. We combined your knowledge with our own methods. We asked questions that you never thought to ask because you already knew the answers you wanted." She walked to the center of the platform. "You want to know what humanity really is? We are the species that assumes everyone else is smarter than us, so we study, we prepare, we plan for problems that might never happen. You call it paranoia, we call it being ready." Supreme Commander slammed his fist on his podium. "Ready for what? You have been planning war against the Federation." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We have been planning to defend ourselves if diplomacy failed, and now it has failed." She activated a small device that projected images above her head. The assembled aliens saw human colonies across the outer rim, but these were not the simple farming settlements they expected. They were fortresses. Every human world showed the same transformation. "For 30 years, we built what you saw on the surface, farms and cities and spaceports, but we also built what you could not see, defense networks, hidden shipyards, weapons that you did not know were possible because you never imagined combining technologies from different species." The images changed to show human ships unlike anything in the Federation database. They moved with impossible grace. They carried weapons that bent energy in new ways. They demonstrated capabilities that should not have existed. "Most importantly," Sarah continued, "we prepared our people. Every human child learns about warfare as part of their history education. Every human adult serves 2 years in our planetary defense forces. Every human colony is ready to defend itself because we never forgot that peaceful intentions do not guarantee peaceful outcomes." The hall erupted in angry voices. Species demanded explanations. Some called for immediate action against humanity. Others wanted to know how many human surprises still remained hidden. Sarah waited for quiet. When it came, she spoke again. "The Coalition wants our colonies. They believe force will give them what they want. They are wrong, but if they choose to continue this path, they will learn exactly how wrong they are." Elder rose from his floating platform. "Are you threatening the combined military might of 800 species?" Sarah's expression was completely calm. "I am explaining reality, Elder. You voted to take our colonies by force. We warned you that would be unwise. You ignored our warning. Now you will face the consequences." Supreme Commander stood as well. "The Coalition will not be intimidated by human tricks. We will mobilize the largest fleet in galactic history. We will take not just your colonies, but your as well." "Then you will attack Earth," Sarah said simply. "And you will discover why we spent 30 years learning from you instead of learning to be like you." The vote was swift and overwhelming. 812 species agreed to support coalition military action against humanity. The target would be Earth itself. If humans wanted to play with advanced technology, they would face the combined might of the galaxy. Within days, the largest military fleet in galactic history began to assemble. Ships from dozens of species converged on rallying points across the galaxy. They contributed their heavy battle cruisers. The ethereals sent their ancient dreadnoughts. Hive species provided swarms of fighter craft. Energy beings offered their living ships that could repair themselves in battle. 10,000 vessels prepared to jump to the Sol system. Never before had so many species worked together for a single military operation. The fleet was large enough to conquer entire sectors of space. Intelligence reports suggested that Earth had perhaps 50 ships for system defense. Even with their new technology, humans could not possibly stand against such overwhelming numbers. Admiral, nephew of the Supreme Commander, was given overall command of the invasion fleet. He had studied the reports from New Geneva carefully. He knew humans had new defensive capabilities, but he also knew that no technology could overcome such massive numerical superiority. When the fleet jumped into the Sol system, Admiral expected to find a frightened world surrounded by a small defensive force. He expected humans to surrender quickly when they saw the size of the force arrayed against them. What he found instead changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. Earth's moon was no longer the simple gray rock that appeared in outdated star charts. It had been transformed into something impossible. The surface showed geometric patterns that stretched from pole to pole. Energy readings indicated that the entire moon was now a single massive weapons platform. Mars was worse. The red planet bristled with orbital platforms and shipyards that should have taken centuries to build. Ships moved between construction facilities in numbers that made no sense for a species that supposedly had only a small fleet. But the asteroid belt was the most shocking sight of all. What had once been scattered rocks drifting in space was now an organized network of defensive platforms, hidden bases, and ship construction facilities. The entire belt had been converted into the largest military installation any species had ever created. And from that massive installation came the human fleet. They did not look like the simple patrol ships that had visited other worlds for 30 years. These vessels moved with liquid grace through space. They accelerated and changed direction in ways that should have turned their crews into paste. They radiated energy signatures that indicated weapon systems beyond anything the Coalition had brought. Admiral stared at his tactical display as more human ships appeared. 50 became 100. 100 became 500. 500 became 1,000. The numbers kept climbing until his computers could no longer track individual vessels. A communication channel opened without his permission. A human woman appeared on his screen. She wore a simple military uniform with a single star on her collar. "I am Admiral of the Terran Defense Force," she said. Her voice was calm and professional. "You have entered our home system with hostile intent. You have 10 minutes to begin withdrawal, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Admiral looked at his display again. 10,000 Coalition ships faced perhaps 3,000 human vessels. The numbers still favored the invaders, but something in the human admiral's voice made him hesitate. "Human," he said, "you are outnumbered more than 3 to 1. Surrender now and your world will be spared." Admiral smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral," she said, "you were warned. You chose not to listen. Now you will learn what happens when you bring a knife to a gun fight." The human fleet began to move, and the Battle of Sol started. The Battle of Sol began with silence. For 30 seconds, neither fleet moved. 10,000 Coalition ships faced 3,000 human vessels across the dark space between worlds. Both sides knew that what happened next would change the galaxy forever. Admiral gave the order to attack. The Coalition fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile swarms, and exotic weapons that bent space itself all flew toward the human formation. It was enough firepower to destroy entire planets. None of it reached the human ships. The same invisible barriers that had protected New Geneva surrounded every human vessel. But these were different. Instead of simply reflecting attacks, they absorbed the incoming fire and fed it into the human weapons systems. The Coalition was literally powering their enemies' guns. Admiral opened a channel that reached every ship in the enemy fleet. "Thank you for the energy donation," she said politely. "We will put it to good use." The human fleet split into hunting packs of 50 ships each. They moved through space with impossible precision, like schools of fish or flocks of birds. No human vessel flew alone. No formation left gaps for enemies to exploit. But it was not just their movement that terrified the coalition forces. It was the sounds. Human ships broadcast audio on every frequency the aliens could hear. When coalition vessels were destroyed, their death screams were recorded and played back to their allies. When captains gave desperate orders, the humans repeated their words in mocking voices. When crews panicked, their fear was amplified and shared with every ship in their fleet. They had used terror tactics for centuries, but humans had studied those tactics and perfected them. They knew exactly how to break warrior pride. They understood which sounds would trigger panic in different species. They had spent 30 years learning how each alien race responded to psychological pressure. For the swarm fleets, humans played the recorded sounds of queens dying. The drones immediately lost coordination and began flying in random directions. For the energy beings who prided themselves on mental control, humans broadcast chaotic static that disrupted their concentration. Ancient creatures who had lived found themselves unable to think clearly for the first time in their existence. For the warriors who valued honor above life, humans demonstrated how helpless they were. Human ships disabled vessels without destroying them, leaving the crews alive to watch their comrades die around them. Admiral tried to maintain control of his fleet, but human tactics made coordination impossible. Every order he gave was intercepted and broadcast to the entire coalition force, along with commentary from human analysts. The admiral wants his ships to form a defensive sphere. A calm human voice announced to all frequencies. This is a classic formation designed to maximize overlapping fire. Unfortunately, it also groups his ships closely enough for our area effect weapons to be most efficient. We thank him for the tactical assistance. The formation was destroyed minutes later by weapons that turned space itself into fire. Hundreds of ships vanished in coordinated strikes that hit from directions the aliens had not known existed. But the humans were not finished with their psychological warfare. As coalition ships tried to retreat, human vessels pursued them with casual efficiency. The aliens realized that the human fleet was not fighting at full capacity. They were toying with their enemies, playing with them like cats with mice. "Attention coalition forces," Admiral announced. "You came here to conquer our home. You threatened our families. You planned to take our worlds and make us your slaves. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." Human ships began demonstrating capabilities that should not have existed. They moved through solid matter without being affected. They fired weapons that ignored shields and struck directly at ship cores. They used gravity itself as a tool, crushing enemy vessels like empty cans. Most terrifying of all was their restraint. The humans could have destroyed the entire coalition fleet in minutes. Their technology clearly allowed for that level of devastation. Instead, they chose to disable ships and let their crews survive. They captured vessels intact rather than vaporizing them. They made it clear that this was not humanity fighting for survival. This was humanity teaching a lesson. Admiral watched his mighty fleet dissolve around him. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds fled in panic from human vessels that barely seemed to notice their presence. Captains who had commanded with absolute authority for centuries begged for mercy over open channels. Within 6 hours, the largest military fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors, limping toward the edge of the solar system. Less than half of the original 10,000 ships remained in any condition to fight. Admiral appeared on every surviving ship's communication system, one final time. "Your fleet is broken," she announced. "Your ships are running. Your crews are demoralized. You came to Earth expecting to find a weak species that would surrender to superior numbers. Instead, you found humanity as we really are." She paused to let her words sink in. This was not our full strength. This was not humanity unleashed. This was humanity making a point. We tried to be your partners. You demanded to be our masters. We tried to follow your rules. You insisted on using force. The image of the human admiral showed no emotion as she delivered her final message. "You came to our home uninvited. You threatened our families. You planned to enslave our worlds. Now we are coming to yours." Admiral cut the communication and tried to rally his remaining forces for a fighting retreat, but his ships were scattered across the solar system. His crews were demoralized beyond recovery. His communications were compromised by human technology he did not understand. As the last coalition ships jumped to hyperspace, human vessels followed them. The counterattack began immediately. Human fleets appeared simultaneously at a dozen coalition worlds. Not the farming colonies or frontier settlements, but the major military bases and industrial centers that supported the invasion force. At Prime, the orbital defense stations were reduced to scrap metal in less than an hour. The mighty space elevators that had taken centuries to build were cut apart with surgical precision, but the planet itself was untouched. The cities were unharmed. The civilian population was left alone. The message was clear. We could have killed everyone, but we chose not to. The ancient ethereal capital ship, pride of their civilization for 2,000 years, was captured intact. Human boarding parties took control of the vessel without firing a single shot inside its hull. They disabled its crew with technology that temporarily shut down their mental abilities, then sent the ship back to its fleet with a simple message. "We borrowed this to prove a point. We are returning it undamaged to show we are not barbarians like you." On a dozen worlds, coalition military facilities simply stopped working. Power systems shut down. Communications networks went dark. Weapon systems refused to function. Human ships appeared in orbit not to attack, but to demonstrate that they could have attacked at any time they chose. The galaxy realized that humanity had not been hiding on Earth for 30 years. They had been everywhere. Human technology had infiltrated every major system in coalition space. Human agents had been preparing for this day since the first diplomatic contact. When the fighting finally ended 3 days later, the coalition had lost more than half their military capability. But they had also learned something more important and more terrifying. Humanity had held back. Even in total victory, humans had shown restraint. They could have destroyed entire worlds but chose not to. They could have killed millions but limited themselves to military targets. They could have enslaved their enemies but instead offered terms for surrender. The most advanced military civilizations in the galaxy had been defeated by a species they considered primitive. But worse than defeat was the knowledge that their conquerors were still being gentle with them. In the aftermath, as alien leaders counted their losses and tried to understand what had happened, a single question haunted every species in the galaxy. If this was humanity holding back, what were they truly capable of when they did not? 3 months after the Battle of Saul, the galaxy was a very different place. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council still held thousands of seats, but many were now empty. Some species had retreated to reconsider their place in the universe. Others had simply stopped attending sessions where they no longer had any real power. Ambassador Sarah walked to the central podium instead of the small human section where she used to sit. No one questioned her right to be there. No one challenged her authority. The beings who had once laughed at human warnings now listened to her words with careful attention. She was no longer called ambassador. The alien delegates addressed her as supreme coordinator, though she had never asked for the title. It simply seemed natural after what had happened. "The reconstruction of orbital facilities is proceeding on schedule," she reported to the assembly. "Their new defense stations will be operational within 6 months. The ethereal industrial centers that were damaged during the conflict have been upgraded with improved technology. She paused to look around the hall. All repairs are being conducted by human engineering teams at no cost to the affected species. We broke it, so we will fix it. Elder of the Ethereal Collective spoke without using his mind voice. He had learned that humans found telepathic communication rude unless invited. Supreme Coordinator, our people are grateful for the assistance, but many wonder about the terms of this new arrangement. Sarah nodded. The terms are simple, Elder. Humanity will provide protection for all Federation worlds against external threats. We will prevent any species from developing weapons capable of threatening others. We will maintain galactic peace through superior force. Supreme Commander, who had somehow survived the destruction of his fleet, asked the question that many were thinking. And in return? Nothing, Sarah replied simply. We ask for no tribute. We demand no territory. We require no special privileges. We simply insist on peace. The hall was quiet as delegates considered her words. Some species were thriving under the new system. Without the need to maintain expensive military forces, they could focus on science, art, and exploration. Trade flourished when wars became impossible. Colonization continued at a faster pace than ever before. But other species were less happy with their new guardians. In secret meeting rooms across the galaxy, military leaders and political figures gathered to discuss rebellion. They planned ways to develop hidden weapons. They schemed to build alliances that might challenge human dominance. They dreamed of returning to the old days when strength determined outcomes. Sarah knew about all of it. Human intelligence networks had infiltrated every major government in the Federation. Their technology could monitor communications across thousands of worlds. Their agents reported every whispered conversation and secret meeting. But humanity chose to wait and watch rather than act immediately. They preferred to let potential rebels reveal themselves completely before taking action. It was more efficient than hunting down individual conspirators. Some of you believe you can challenge human authority, Sarah said without looking at any specific delegation. You think we have weaknesses you can exploit. You imagine that time will reduce our advantages. She activated the holographic display above the podium. Images appeared showing human facilities across the galaxy, shipyards that had been built in secret, weapon platforms hidden in asteroid fields, defense networks that spanned entire star systems. You are welcome to try, she continued. But understand that what you saw at Sol was only the beginning. Every month that passes makes humanity stronger. Every year that passes makes challenging us more pointless. The images changed to show new technologies. Ships that could travel between stars in minutes instead of days. Weapons that could crack planets like eggs. Defensive systems that made entire solar systems invulnerable to attack. We are not conquerors, Sarah explained. Conquerors take what they want and leave ruins behind. We are gardeners. We cultivate peace so that all species can grow and prosper. A delegate from the Spiral Alliance raised a tentacle. Supreme Coordinator, many of our people feel that humanity has become the tyrant that the Federation was created to prevent. Sarah considered the accusation carefully. Perhaps, she admitted. But we are tyrants who prevent war instead of starting it. We are dictators who enforce peace instead of conquest. We are overlords who ask for nothing except that you stop trying to kill each other. She looked directly at the Alliance delegate. If that makes us monsters, then we accept that judgment. But we will not apologize for stopping your species from destroying themselves. The session continued for hours as always, but the real decisions had already been made. Humanity controlled the galaxy now, whether anyone liked it or not. They had proven that resistance was futile and cooperation was rewarded. But in the private chambers of the human delegation, a very different conversation was taking place. Admiral stood before a holographic star map that showed the known galaxy. Red markers indicated human fleet positions. Blue markers showed alien worlds under protection. Green markers represented the growing network of sensor stations that monitored everything. "Status report," Sarah requested as she entered the chamber. "All defensive preparations are on schedule," Admiral replied. "The early warning network now covers 90% of the galaxy's outer rim. Fleet construction is exceeding projections. Planetary defenses are being installed faster than originally planned." Sarah studied the map carefully. "How long until we are ready?" "Conservative estimate: 5 years for minimal preparation, 10 years for optimal readiness." "And if they arrive sooner?" Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Then we fight with what we have and hope it is enough." Sarah activated additional displays that showed information not available to the regular Federation. Long-range sensor data from the void between galaxies. Energy signatures that indicated massive artificial structures. Movement patterns that suggested a civilization far older and more advanced than anything in their local group. "The Devourers," she said quietly. "Our telescopes detected their first scout ships 18 months ago. Deep space monitors confirmed their approach 6 months later. They will be here within a decade." The images showed creatures and machines that understanding, beings that consumed entire stars for energy, ships the size of moons, weapons that could erase matter from existence, a civilization that had already destroyed 12 other galaxies. "Does the Federation know?" Admiral asked. "No," Sarah replied, "and they cannot know, not yet. If the alien species learned what was coming, panic would destroy any chance of preparation. Some would try to flee, others would surrender immediately, a few would go insane from the knowledge." She turned away from the displays. "This is why we had to take control. Not because we wanted to rule the galaxy, but because someone had to prepare it for what is coming. The old Federation would have argued and debated until the Devourers arrived. Individual species would have tried to save only themselves." Admiral nodded grimly. "So we become the villains to save everyone." "We become whatever we need to be," Sarah corrected. "If being hated keeps the galaxy united, then we accept their hatred. If being feared makes them cooperate, then we accept their fear." She looked back at the star map one final time. "In 10 years, when the first Devourer ships arrive, they will find a galaxy that is ready for them. Not because 500 species decided to work together, but because humanity forced them to." The chamber fell silent as both women considered the burden they carried. The galaxy saw them as conquerors who had seized power through superior force. The truth was more complex and more terrible. They were the species that had looked into the dark between stars and seen what was coming. They were the ones who had accepted the responsibility of preparing for a threat that no one else knew existed. They were the guardians who would be hated for their protection until the day their protection was needed. In distant reaches of intergalactic space, ancient sensors detected the growing unity of the galaxy ahead. Vast intelligences noted the improved defenses and increased cooperation among the local species. Cold calculations determined that conquest would be more difficult than originally anticipated. But the Devourers had consumed entire galactic clusters. They had erased civilizations that spanned millions of years. A single galaxy with improved defenses was merely an interesting challenge. They continued their approach, curious to see what these humans were building and confident that it would not matter in the end. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, delegates continued their debates about trade routes and territorial disputes. They complained about human oversight and longed for the independence they had lost. They planned small rebellions and dreamed of freedom from their unwanted protectors. None of them knew that their survival depended on the very humans they resented. And that was exactly how Sarah intended to keep it, until the day when keeping secrets would no longer matter.